Thank you very much, everybody that joined us today. My name is Leo. I'll be your host for today's webinar, where we'll be exploring the fascinating world of virtual cards and their growing significance in the business world. We're also joined today by three modern finance leaders who I'm really happy that they're here, and they'll be sharing with us some insights on how this is basically redefining cost control for many businesses alike. So we'll be talking about solution strategies, and in particular talking about these virtual cards and how these advances in fintech can help finance teams to control and boost their efficiency. Before we get going, hopefully you can all hear me. If you can't, please just raise your hand or put in the chat box any questions during the day. There's a Q&A button at the bottom. Please just hit that. We've got a team sitting behind the scenes, and they will be making sure that all of the questions you ask will at least come back to you. Some we'll do at the end of the session, if there's time. Alternatively, we'll get back to everybody on email afterwards. So please feel free to ask any questions. And if you're interested in anything else, please email us any request to sales@prospend.com. It's not .com.au, so just prospend.com, and then we'll be keen to help you. So with that being said, I'd like to give a very warm welcome to our panelists today. So first of all, we got Nunzio Giunta, managing partner at Giuntabell. He's well recognized in the industry for his work across non-for-profits, and also a member of prestigious bodies. He's a non-exec board member on several businesses, and is a prominent figure in the finance world across Australia. So welcome today, Nunzio. We're also joined by Jacqui Sanderson. She's the finance officer at Jam TV. Now, Jam TV is Australia's largest independent producer of sports and entertainment, delivering content to free-to-air broadcasters and subscription and streaming services. As an interesting fact, Jam TV was one of our first customers that we onboarded onto these virtual cards. And Jacqui today will be sharing with us a little bit more about some of the problems and the requirements that the solution helped solve for their team. So very welcome to you as well, Jacqui. And lastly, we're also joined by Sharon Nouh, ProSpend CEO and founder. The reason why I kind of started there, sometimes when I ask Siri about call Sharon, if they're calling Sharon now, because I never know if it's Sharon Nouh or Sharon now. But anyway, Sharon's on line as well today. And she did not only just tirelessly work with the product team to help build this virtual card and be one of the first companies in Australia to bring banking as a service to the market, but she also works very closely with our customers to truly try and understand what they need from our platform, kind of then bring that to the fore. But we also switched on virtual cards for ourselves, and we'll talk about that a little bit internally today and about the benefits of us drinking our own champagne, so to speak. So really excited about that. So welcome, Sharon. All right, so for those who are not that familiar with who we are, a very brief introduction on ProSpend. Simply put, our purpose is to build next-generation finance tools that empower businesses, assisting them to make proactive financial decisions while also enabling their people to be more productive. It's a mouthful, but essentially, as you can see, we've got a plethora of modules and tools from AP invoice automation to travel management, as well as obviously virtual cards, which is the point we will kind of touch on today. Like I said, if there's any questions during today, please feel free to ask them or email us at sales@prospend.com. So before we chat with our panelists, just want to quickly start by explaining maybe a little bit about what is a virtual card, and by highlighting the key differences from traditional corporate business cards and employee reimbursements. So traditional corporate business cards are physical cards that tend to have been issued to employees. They can be convenient, but also comes with some limitations. There's a risk of loss, potential misuse, time is processed around reconciliation, and also the time it sometimes takes to issue new ones, onboarding new employees as well. Whereas with virtual cards, on the other hand, they offer much better control, flexibility. They have security, which is in part of it because it's digital and are instant. So virtual cards, in essence, is a digital payment solution. Unlike traditional physical corporate cards, they exist purely in a digital format. They can be used on a smartphone wallet, as you can see on the side here, or via an online payment gateway. So you can use these cards to also pay for services and goods online. And these cards are typically issued through some sort of a platform. So ProSpend is one of those where you can do that through. Now, you also get credit virtual cards. Ours in our case, is a debit card, which gets linked to a company account. So employee reimbursements, on the other hand, often involved a lot of time-consuming processes. Employees had to spend their own money, and in a time where cost of living is quite high, the virtual card removes some of those barriers for employees to have a smoother process and a lot quicker issuing of those the reimbursements and specifically the reconciliation at month end as well. So if you team this up, obviously, with a expense management platform, that means that you now get receipts, bank fee, card management, all done in a single platform, which obviously then saves your employees a ton of time. And this, in fact, helped companies to then reduce the risk of fraud, making employees a lot happier, less out-of-pocket claims. So essentially, as you can see on the screen there, it's instant, it's mobile friendly, it enhances your employee satisfaction and redefines how we can manage it. So you'll see here's a very quick, brief snapshot of what those cards would look like inside of ProSpend platform. Now, this gives companies the ability to issue, track, and control all their expenses within this. As an admin user, they can set limits on transactions, daily limits, build approval processes, set expiry dates. You could issue multiple cards for different things. Some people, as an example, use a card per subscription as an example to make sure they can manage that better, but we'll touch on all of these things as we move on. So without further ado, if you're interested, by the way, in anything you've seen today, like I said, feel free to reach out to us. But I'm going to open the floor now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to welcome to the floor Jacqui, and we're going to start a little bit of conversation to just kind of see how they got into that in the first place around the virtual card. So, hi Jacqui, how are you?
I'm great, thanks, Leo. Yourself?
Very good, thank you. Thank you for being here today. I'd like to open maybe by just asking you kind of like what has changed over the years that has made businesses like yours look at a solution such as a virtual card.
Yeah, well, I guess like everybody, we were affected by COVID and working from home with during lockdowns, and we had to change our internal processes. And in so doing, we developed a PDF document or scenario with coding added to it as a note, and network drives and special Excel spreadsheets, and it was time consuming. It was tedious. So ProSpend came along, and that refined our processes. Invoicing is now all electronically sent via email, etc. And from a card perspective, um, we had bank debit cards. There were about 4 to 5 that were issued throughout our company,
Okay.
and
Yep.
they were shared. So, trying to track down who was responsible for which spend could sometimes be a horrific
I
nightmare.
can imagine. Yeah, that probably slowed down your like month end processes as well, I would imagine.
Absolutely, it did. Yeah, I mean, there were times where we had to, just throw our hands in the air and go, "We have no idea who spent this." So, um, virtual cards changed that for us completely. It put the card in the hands of the spend spender, and for our production teams, because we are all very um, finite little groups. So and all our productions have their own little profit and loss. So
Hmm.
those production teams really needed to be able to manage their spend and know whether they were keeping within budget. Um, so
Fantastic.
providing each team with their own card made life a lot easier, and um, it gave the production managers control. So they love it. The fact that we already had introduced ProSpend for invoices and cash reimbursements meant that our production team already knew the system. So we're very
Hmm.
comfortable with it. Adding cards was just a godsend to them, because it's just reduced the amount of having to do cash reimbursements, which again was still quite time consuming and after the fact. I mean, many times even some of the higher managers wouldn't submit their expenses for months.
Yeah.
So getting them on a virtual card on their mobile phone has made a big difference to us, because we can finish our month end, our year end, our quarter ends a lot quicker than we
And you're
used to.
also more accurate then, I suppose. I mean, if you think about just simply doing a month-end run, having all the expenses already in and coded to the accounting system means that your reporting is so much more accurate at a quicker time, right? So it's not just about the time to close, but it's also you can trust the data and the figures a bit more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a purchase is virtually in the system immediately. It really depends on the vendor, but most of the time, I'd say probably 99% of the time, as soon as a purchase is made, it's in ProSpend, and our production team can code and submit instantaneously. So it's been a massive benefit from that perspective, and not having to chase anyone for where's your spend, or it's quite simple. Hey, you haven't submitted your ProSpend card for this month. Do it, please. And much
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, no, that's such a great case study. I think a lot of people can obviously relate to that. I think I don't know if you've gone from 4 cards, I don't know to how many, but even though there's more cards, you've got more control. So and everybody is happier, as you said. So no, thanks for some of that insight. If I can maybe move over to Nunzio, obviously being such a prominent figure, I mean, you talk with a lot of businesses constantly where you go. Um, in kind of your experience and understanding of businesses, why do you reckon businesses would be turning to virtual cards, and like what gap do you think that bridge? Because I mean, obviously we're not the only virtual cards that's out there, but there's obviously a lot going on in this space at the moment. Yeah, just kind of want to get your insight as to why do you think businesses and like what gap does that fit?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of reasons that they're looking to moving to virtual cards, but three in particular that I've come across that are really important, and Jacqui's already touched on it. Now, I'm in my professional career, I'm responsible for end of month close many times, and I ask my finance team what's holding up end of month close, and majority of the time is we haven't reconciled our credit cards, and that is one of the key factors that holds up end of month close. So with virtual cards, there's no excuse anymore. And what we're able to do is actually get that information on a daily basis, reconcile it throughout the month. So when it comes to end of month close, it's pretty much taking care of itself. So that's one of the number one really important factors for the finance teams, and also reduces the friction between finance teams and the operational staff. So that's really important as well. The other one is security. Credit cards are probably the biggest cause of fraud within organizations, or the opportunity for fraud. And what I see when you've got non-virtual cards, physical cards, teams sharing those cards. And so there's lack of accountability of who's actually used that card. And that's where it then opens up fraud. With virtual cards, it's so easy to be able to issue a card to each individual very quickly. Staff member starts today, you can issue them a card. And then therefore that keeps controls. And I've seen reduces the chance of fraud, credit card fraud within organisations, and auditors love it because they can see the accountability. The third one, and this is my favourite, who likes dealing with banks when it comes to issuing and cancelling credit cards? I know I don't. I've wasted countless hours dealing with banks in terms of managing that function. Now you don't need to deal with the bank; you can quickly issue and cancel credit cards without talking to the bank. Love it.
Yes, that's fantastic. There's some really good points in there. I think one of the security is probably the big thing, because a lot of people have said to us, "Oh, how is this more secure than a physical card?" Well, at the end of the day, you can't skim this card, right? So at the end of the day, it is still a method of payment. So if somebody is doing, I don't know, phishing on your computer when you put the digits in, but at the end of the day, it's got less problems. But you could also stop it yourself instantly. So if you do pick up something suspicious, you can actually, you've got control over doing those functions immediately. You don't have to phone, get on another, call center and wait another hour or whatever. So there's a lot of controls in there, which makes it a lot more beneficial. Yeah, thank you for some of that insight, Nunzio. Sharon, when you decided to build virtual cards as a solution, I know you spoke to many of our customers and industry thought leaders. What were you hearing? Like, what were you hearing as a point across businesses that they wanted you to solve for?
Thanks, Leo. I'm just going to do a bit of a heads up. I've got a terrible cold, and I really hope I don't cough throughout this. So if you see me sipping a bit of tea, that's the reason why. I guess a quick background as to why we want to offer virtual cards. ProSpend was actually the first locally developed expense management solution in Australia. So we originally solved the manual and paper processes that businesses had with employee reimbursements and the credit card reconciliation, card spend. And we launched that product about 10 years ago. So we had already, wanted to automate and make that process for managing expenses a lot better and easier back in the day. And that actually was a game changer for companies. They could now digitize and automate these two processes, faster, visible, and easier for employees and approvers. But there was still a couple of pain points, or a few pain points. And one of them that's close to my heart with employee reimbursements is that we were still asking our staff to use their own funds for company expenses, and then having to be reimbursed. But literally there was no other option, back in the day. That was just the way it had to be. Over the years, we've had all our staff running around spending their own money and then putting in this employee reimbursement.
And then they wait a month or until the next pay cycle, right?
Yeah,
which means they're out of pocket for quite a long time.
Yeah, and I just don't think that's very fair, particularly in today's economic cost of living, and especially if somebody has to go away on a big trip and it's a few $1,000s. So now with virtual cards, that completely eliminates that. So instantly, people have the funds available on their digital wallets, so they don't have to be spending their own money. So that was a pain point that has now been solved. The second one was, as Nunzio said, the time it took to issue cards for people and dealing with the banks. So that's gone. That pain point is now gone. Virtual cards can be issued instantly, but obviously they're issued still with all the spending controls around it. So you're not just issuing blank checks for people. There is a lot of controls that you put in place with these cards. So that's now great. And the third pain point that was still around was, if somebody had a really large amount of money they need to spend, they want to go away on a trip overseas unexpectedly, or something broke in the office and they needed to replace it. If they didn't have a credit card and they were having to use their own funds, that was really onerous. But now with the virtual cards, you can issue one-time virtual cards just for that one purpose, one trip, and then they close off as soon as that purpose is solved.
So, like for say an advance, so if somebody was to go on a trip for 3 days and they normally would have had an advance, so you would essentially issue them a card with an expiry in 3 days, right?
Yep,
with some limits on it.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do that in the platform. So it's just going to the next level, the next part of going forward with managing, expenses for people. So I was so excited when we were finally able to launch this earlier this year. It'd been, in my mind for a few years, and then of course it took us about a year to develop it, to get it out and find a partner. But I'm super pleased that we've finally.
It makes a lot of sense as well to have the card in the expense tool, because now, even some of the other problems you would typically have, even if it is another card system, you should still have to get those feeds into the expense management tool that helps with the reconciliation of the slips. Whereas now, with these cards being in the same platform, it just made absolute sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic.
So Sharon and Leo, just one of the things about issuing cards. So in the NFP sector, you've got directors that are volunteers, and these directors travel. And in some cases, what we expect them to do is pay themselves out of using their own credit card and then get reimbursed. And all the friction that creates. And so we now issue, in some cases, virtual cards to the directors when they do those trips, and just removes the entire friction of them having to pay for it. They're volunteers, and so that works really well. It's an example.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's a really good use case. Makes a lot of sense. Jacqui, you alluded to a little bit earlier, obviously around some of the benefits specifically to you and your team, but also I'd like to really maybe just drill into the benefits that your employees has got from that, as well as the admin team. If you could maybe just explore the use of this and how much easier it's made your life and the employee's life, and just the true value and the benefit that you've had from that.
Yeah, sure. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we had four to five debit cards shared around the company. We now have 22 card holders, all on a ProSpend card. And so they are able to spend as they need, with obviously company rules behind that, but it's visible instantaneously. They can do it online, they can do it in person, and just pick up their phone and away they go. From the production management team's perspective, they are definitely seeing the benefit, because they're not having to go running around trying to find a spare debit card. Their coding is pretty much a couple of drop down boxes and away they go, versus using the old debit card system where they'd have to get
submitting an Excel spreadsheet or something.
Exactly, yeah. And then submit it and then wait and then be chased perhaps for more information. If it was a meal, for example, out with a customer or client, we need to know who for FBT purposes. So all of that can be very quickly and easily looked after within the virtual card system and ProSpend itself. So
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so that's been a massive benefit for the staff. From finance's perspective, we already touched on how much quicker it is to close off, but definitely from Jam's perspective, we had a lot of growth in the last 18 months. We've taken on National Basketball League, Australian soccer, a few other big growth items, and our AP has tripled in terms of invoices. But our finance team has only really needed to grow by a 2-day-a-week payroll officer. So
I love hearing that. That is such a great story, because I think sometimes people think at growth and a business that just comes with more cost as well, but this makes it more scalable, right?
Absolutely. I'm the AP person, and I assist the payroll team. We haven't needed, my hours haven't changed. It's just so much simpler, and the production teams love the system because it's easier for them as well. They're definitely seeing the benefit. It's quicker. They can look up their own invoices. So often it's a very transient business. So if they are utilising a supplier that they've used in the last 2 or 3 years, they can quickly go into ProSpend, look up that supplier, and have a look at how much did they charge us last time. So the benefits are so many, quantifiable, as well as beneficial, and they're happier. I mean, that's a big plus.
Yeah, a lot can be said these days. I think, people go, it makes employees happier. Well, what has that got to do with the business? But these days we all know businesses still are, quite reliant on people in some shape or fashion. And having, in a job market where, unemployment is at a record low, fighting for employees becomes, something. So having good systems in place that helps their day-to-day life is obviously not something to be to snuff at. Yeah.
I want to just add to that point with the young things today. If you employ them and you ask them to fill out a paper form, they're going, "What? Where's my app for that?" Like, it's just it's just not something they want to do. So we've changed.
The team are definitely happy to have a card on their phone. Our head of content refused to use a debit card because it would mean he'd have to carry a wallet. So when the virtual cards became available, he was, yep, sign me up, I'm in, and yeah, he loves it. So.
Yeah. And that is important. It is, absolutely. You know, keeping our employees happy, which is why I love it. They're not having to spend their own money. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, still have the control, right? Because one of the things that some people says, oh, we can't give blank checks to employees. So it's obviously giving it to them, but making sure that there's still, in fact, more control. And you have had like it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, there's complete visibility from finance's perspective, and we can set up multiple approvers, which we have in many cases. But finance can view every single transaction that hits those cards, and if there's anything that we might think is questionable, bang, you know who to ask. You find out what the story is, and you know. Some of our employees have accidentally used their virtual card to make a personal spend. They know straight away that they've done it because it's there in front of them. So they come to me and say, "Oh, well, how will we fix this?" And we sort it out. So it's definitely control of spend, and you know, you do not need to worry about.
One of the things we can do in our system is you can flag anything as a personal item as well, so that you can then treat those lines of the statement separately. But that's really good. Just for those who's online, I can see there's a few hands raised. Like Tanya, feel free to just pop a question in the Q&A. We're not going to take live Q&A, so just put a question through there. I can see there's a few other there, Tony as well, and Daniel has put some questions in already. Please keep them coming. Really appreciate your engagement, and so we'll try our best to get to some of those questions at the end of the session. So Nunzio, if I could maybe flick back to you, maybe talking again more specifically around NFTs, which is kind of one of the key sectors you work in. What are the real use cases that you can see for virtual cards, other than the one you explained, where maybe directors go on these trips as volunteers or whatever? Maybe just give me some insights into how you see that play out.
Yeah, absolutely, Leo. So this was actually a user case. We had a client that had 40 corporate cards, and the pain of dealing, which I've raised, for dealing with the banks and issuing them and cancelling them. And so that's the problem we're solving, replacing those 40 cards with virtual cards to solve that problem. And literally after 2 weeks of using those virtual cards, what we saw were the leadership team really embracing it, and then actually started thinking about different ideas on how those virtual cards could be used. And this organisation was in the disability employment space, so they're interfacing and dealing with clients that they're helping them get jobs. And as part of the funding was actually paying for equipment or resources or training while actually with the clients. And so what we trialled is actually the client-facing staff issuing them with cards to actually pay for expenses on behalf of their clients. And so that was really instant ability to support clients there on the spot. And it was so successful that organisation now has 120 virtual cards across all the services that it provides. It's been really a success. Another client where the problem trying to solve was security. They had it's in the domestic violence space, so it's staff, and typically in some cases casual staff, helping individuals after hours. And what they'd have to carry with them was cash, because they didn't have physical credit cards, and either had cash or physical debit cards, which they'll then use to support those people in need. With the virtual cards, we're able to issue those, and now they're able to support individuals experiencing domestic violence after hours. And they were really two real success stories on how virtual cards are being used.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's so good to sometimes just hear how businesses can use this, because there's different use cases for different sectors, and obviously we cater for quite a lot of different industries. Obviously with the NFPs, we've got quite a few of those on the books as well, but really appreciate you sharing some of that. Just whilst we talk about use cases, Sharon, I think it's always the best to really truly understand how to use what is a virtual card when we talk about the use cases of it. Is there maybe anything we haven't discussed, some other use cases you can think of for virtual cards?
Yes, there is. Thank you, Leo. When we launched the virtual cards earlier this year, at the same time, I was traveling with our company credit card and went to Melbourne and had to hand the card over for at the hotel, and it got compromised. So this was an absolute nuisance because all of the company subscriptions hung off this one card.
I vividly remembered that, by the way.
So, and we have a lot of subscriptions, let me tell you, probably more than we actually need, but we're a software company, so I don't know whether that's just more unusual. So we ended up having to spend hours going into every single subscription platform, changing the card and setting up a new one. So it was an absolute nightmare. So what we ended up doing was issuing a virtual card for each subscription. So that's how we've used the virtual cards for subscription management. And what it also means is that I can get reporting at my fingertips out of, what we're spending on each subscription and drill down into it and, cancel maybe some of them that we don't necessarily need. So that was excellent. And the other one I think is very useful is for emergency expenditure. We do have a lot of not-for-profit community care organisations that are using these. And again, an emergency situation, they need some funds. And so the company can just spin that card up, within a minute, and that's on their wallet within a minute. So it's really wonderful to be able to cater for those emergency situations. I was just actually having a look at the Q&A questions, and I did actually just want to call out one of them.
Sure.
That somebody asked, can you provide information about ProSpend's ideal target market, i.e. does your system cater the needs of bigger organisations? And I just wanted to say yes, definitely. We are a platform that has many mid to bigger businesses. And so whilst, yes, the portal is there, for you to, issue them and cancel them and all the rest of it, there is a lot of controls around requesting a card. How many approval levels do you want to have? Who can edit these cards? So all of those normal controls that mid to bigger businesses already want to have in their organisation, we have that in our platform. We're very aware of the needs of that target, about that market. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sharon. That's really good. I think on that topic, I would like to keep this fluid. I'm just sharing my screen again. So for those, there's a couple of questions that come. It's all very similar. That says, I understand the benefits. Thanks for highlighting that, but how does it work? Can we get a demo? Obviously, for those who are interested, please send an email to sales@prospend.com. We will get back to you and we can organize a demonstration one-on-one with you. We're not going to do that today, but you'll see on the screen here is just where we would simply issue and manage a card or multiple cards. Once the system has issued a card, the user would put that card into their wallet on their phone or Apple or Google, whatever they use. And then when they go about their spend, they will simply take a picture of the receipt, and then that transaction that they've spent on that card through their wallet, well, the transaction goes directly as a bank fee to our system, and the receipt that they've uploaded then gets matched. So the reconciliation is then a lot smoother, and then we push that back to their accounting system. So I'm not going to go into that in detail, but I thought it's probably good to just talk about that because I saw a few questions around that. So just going to interject there. So want to move back to the questions. So Jacqui, you and your team have already adopted virtual cards. Thank you for that. And obviously we can hear that there's a lot of great benefits for your team as well. But what's next? What other gaps do you think in financial management operations are there these days, or that you can see in the coming year, and things that tips you've maybe got for better finance operations as we move into 2024?
Yeah. So one thing I'd really like to target with virtual cards is trying to make sure that all the team who really use them are going to use them, and our CEO is one person who's resisting, but we'll work on him. And I really like the idea mentioned previously by Sharon and Nunzio a bit about the subscriptions. I think that's a really good idea and something that we're going to have a look at if I get my way. But for Jam, again, it's because of our productions, because they can be very, very large and very, very small. It's that control of spend. So we're looking for ways to help our production team be more efficient and have the information at their fingertips. The cards are certainly added to that. We had a situation last weekend. We were doing the PGA Championships, and we hired a production assistant for the weekend. Gave him a card, and no issues. As soon as Sunday night came along, the card instantly froze. He could no longer use it for anything else, and the spend was automatically up there. He was shown how to take photographs of his receipts, and bang, the coding's pretty much already done, and it's Wednesday. So that's fantastic for our team. As soon as they know that they can do that there's control, and that this person who's not our employee but somebody we've just hired for a short period of time can still have that accessibility is brilliant for the team. The other things we're looking at is budgets and purchase order systems within ProSpend as well. And we like the idea that those items will link not just with the virtual cards, but with invoices and cash reimbursements. So they're probably some of the next things that we're looking to do.
No, that's really good. Yeah, thanks for that. I think obviously as businesses grow, and one of the great things about our product is it is modular. You can take on budget or POs at any given stage. A lot of people are on bigger ERP solutions. We obviously integrate with multiple companies at various different levels, from ASX listed to majority of the mid-market, as Sharon spoke about earlier. And we integrate with a lot of ERP solutions. So there's a question in there from Guillaume, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, that just talks about how do we integrate with other systems? Do we integrate with Sage? Absolutely, we do. So there's some we integrate through the API. Some of the older products, we do it through a flat file. But either way, we do talk with most of these systems. So yeah, just please feel free to get in touch and we can talk through your specific use case. But as you said, Jacqui, some of the, using purchase orders, some of those ERP solutions or accounting systems for those who's on Xero or whatever don't necessarily have POs or budgets. And so it's good to then also have that in our solution, because we are already talking to that solution. So you can have it all in kind of like one system. So, but thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate that. I'm just cautious of the time. We've got about 7 minutes. So I want to make sure we wrap it up. So I'm going to go over to Nunzio for another last question, maybe. Just like, what approaches and solutions would you suggest to navigate these kind of challenges around cost control and business spend in say the modern business environment? So as you go on your rounds and do your work on the boards, and as you engage with some of these communities, what is kind of the key approaches and solutions you suggest how to overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah. Thanks, Leo. So very aligned with some of Jacqui's comments. AP automation is so critical, and I can relate a horror story. So when I was a CFO of an organisation in the primary healthcare space, government-funded grants, and if you're dealing with grants, comes 30th of June, if you haven't spent your funds, you potentially have to hand them back. So, come around April, May, finance gets asked lots of questions. How much money do I have left for that program? And so finance doesn't always have visibility of all the purchases, all the commitments. And so finance will then, as a team, will work through how much money you got left. And there's one grant in particular that we said, look, you've got $20,000 left to spend. And so what did they do the next day? They spent the $20,000. 3 days later, guess what happens? A invoice for $15,000 turns up that no one knew about. And so what does that mean? We've basically overspent this grant by $15,000. And so the automation solution like ProSpend allows the organisation to record commitments to expenditure, take it through an approval process, and then the finance team gets full visibility on all commitments, and then can be proactive back to managers that are managing grants and say, you've got X amount of dollars left to spend in the next month. Go off and spend it, instead of waiting to answer those, do the calculation, answer the question. So that's definitely a real life example. and I've learned from it, and that's why I think AP automation is so critical, in particular in the not-for-profit sector, but in other sectors as well.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. We've had a few customers with regards to the exact same thing around the acquittals and making sure that the grants get tagged. So for those who don't know, when we integrate with the ERP solutions, many times we would integrate with what's called projects within those tools, which is simply put what they would use in the accounting systems to flag the grants. And so when POs and invoices come through on our system, when it touches the accounting system, it gets flagged with those projects and the tasks sometimes in that. So so the AP automation is definitely something where we see a lot of noise going on at the moment. So thank you for highlighting that, Nunzio. There's another question there from Sonia that I'm just going to quickly address as well as we go. She just asked there whether virtual cards are accepted everywhere, like on an Uber or a taxi at international. So I'll just quickly talk about that. So on my recent trip to Melbourne and to Brisbane, I simply had my phone with me and I could tap away pretty much everywhere where they accept a card that can be tapped through a wallet, which these days is, I would suggest, 90 or 99% of the time. And you can spend it on international suppliers, whether you pay through that on an online card that you check out and you purchase something, or whether you use that as a credit card for payment, or even though this is not a credit card, provided there's funds within that and you've got within the limit, you can use that for a payment for suppliers. But you can also, when you travel, go and tap away on that card, and then you can do international spend. There is obviously some foreign exchange, translations that happen, but hopefully that answers that question. Lastly, before we tie up, Sharon, what approaches? Same question. Just Nunzio, like what are kind of new things we should kind of talk about in the community to really get finance teams, to get better cost control and business spend management happening?
Yeah, thanks, Leo. Just as an FYI, everybody, the cards are actually a Visa card. So wherever Visa card is accepted, the card is accepted. So, I mean, for that question, I'm going to do a blatant plug. One of the best strategies is to use our product. But the name ProSpend actually came from our vision of wanting to enable companies to be proactive with their business spend management and to enable people to be productive. So we believe that technology should do those two things. And there is a plethora of technology tools now available for companies, things like visible budgets. Purchase orders is always something that I bang on about all the time. Purchase orders is, the gold standard, ask to spend the money before it's spent. But in the bad old days, purchase order books were a nightmare and expensive. And the purchase order, opportunities through an ERP were very clunky. So now you can actually have purchase orders, ability to raise a purchase order on your mobile. So that's, another tool that you can use. Real-time reporting, obviously, with daily feeds, with the virtual cards is great. But the other thing that we're leading in with next year, which I wanted to mention, was payments. For our finance teams to be able to literally make payments on invoices out of ProSpend, which will get rid of ABA files, those nasty, insecure, clunky, old technology such as ABA files. So that's what's coming up.
Thank you, Sharon. That's really good. And I just wanted to give a call out. One of our attendees, Biren Prasad, telling, from his perspective that ProSpend is a great expense management system. We did not ask him to say that. It's unsolicited, so I really do appreciate that. And so I suppose with that, we're probably out of time. So I really just want to thank all of our panelists today, taking time out to talk to you all about, what's happening. So, a big shout out to Jacqui for your time. Really appreciate it, and explaining to all of us how you've used that already internally and the benefits that your business have had from it. So thank you so much. Thank you, Nunzio, for your time as well. I know you're a very, very busy man, so do appreciate your thought leadership on this topic, and really it's always a pleasure to have you in the room. And thank you to you, Sharon, as well.
That's fine. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be here too. Thanks, Leo.
And with that, we'll wrap it up. So anybody, please just send us an inquiry to the email on your screen. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next installment. So thanks for tuning in.
We will definitely be replying to all of those questions in the interim. Correct.
Absolutely. Yeah. thanks for all of those questions. There was a lot that came through, which is really good. So do appreciate that. So with that, we'll stop it over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And have a good
Thanks,
day.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.